What's up, guys? Kevin here from KevsPicks.com, and in this video, I'm going to go over my DraftKings NFL Week 7 picks. So I'm coming off a pretty crappy Week 6 with my video picks, but I did send out quite a few solid picks via email. So if you're not signed up for my email list, make sure you do so. It's absolutely free, and the link is in the YouTube description below. Just click on that DFS emails link. You'll get my email updates sent out to you, usually on Sunday mornings. So on to my Week 7 picks. You can see I'm logged into Fantasy Labs here. I've got the Sports Geek model pulled up. You can have access to this model if you are a Fantasy Labs member. So if you're not already, make sure you click on that Fantasy Labs link in the YouTube description as well. So starting off, we got my quarterback here for Week 7. It's going to be Marcus Mariota, 6,900. He'll be one of my higher exposure quarterbacks for the week in GPPs at least. Not sure if I would use him in cash at that price at 6,900. I think I might go a little cheaper if I was playing cash. There's just some other good cheap quarterbacks. But I like him for GPPs at 6,900. Tennessee is in Cleveland against the Browns, 5.5 point favorites. Their implied team total is 25.3. So pretty good situation here for Mariota and the Browns. Mariota should be a little more healthy this week. He wasn't really running much at all last week against the Colts. He should be back to full health, I would guess. They might limit him a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was full go, basically, trying to win a game in Cleveland on the road. If we look at his game log here, nothing too special for him. He's been very consistent. He's been a very solid quarterback, but nothing special in terms of DraftKings scoring. His highest output on the year, 19.7 DraftKings points. But if we look back to last year, he does have the upside. We can see a couple games over 30 DraftKings points, and he's in a great situation here against the Browns, where he could have a monster game. And I like a lot of his pass catchers, which is kind of drawing me towards him as well. So I think he's a good GPP play. Probably wouldn't play him in cash at that price. But he's going to be one of my top GPP plays of the week. And I'll talk about who I'm going to stack him with when we get to receivers. All right, so on to running back with my favorite value running back, Carlos Hyde, 5,900. I'm going to call him a value running back this week. There's not too much under him that I really like. I'll be trying to spend up to a lot of the elite running backs that are high priced this week, but for value, I really like Hyde at 5,900. The 49ers are at home versus the Cowboys. They are 6.5 point favorites, which might scare some people away, but it doesn't really bother me with this high total here at 48.5. The 49ers implied team total is still 21 points. So I think he's in a good situation here. Pretty solid price at 5,900. If we look at his game log, you can see here 13, 20, 24, 14, 24 DraftKings points, and then the only outlier here was the 2.8 against Indianapolis, but I believe he missed a block or something, and he got limited in that game, only 8 carries and 1 target. If we look at the other games, 6, 6, 4, 6, 6 targets, 13, 16, 25, 15, 9 rushing attempts, so he's getting a lot of action. He's putting up a decent amount of DraftKings scores. You can see 3 games over 20 DraftKings points, which would be pretty solid for the price at 5,900. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is at least 20 DraftKings points for him. And I think he's in a good situation here against the Cowboys to do it. So he is my top value running back of the week. All right, so on to receivers, and my quarterback receiver stack of the week to finish that off with Mariota is going to be Rashard Matthews, 5,500. Good matchup against the Browns. If we look at his game log here, he hasn't been anything special this year, I guess I'd say, but he also was missing Mariota in a couple of these games. Has gotten quite a few targets. We can see here 9, 5, 10, 8, 6, and 4. He did have 20.7 DraftKings points against the Seahawks. He's only scored 1 touchdown, which I think is kind of the reason that he's not been doing as well on DraftKings. But if we look at his red zone targets dating back to last year here, he gets a lot of red zone targets. He got a lot of touchdowns last year, and I think some regression is coming. I think he will get some touchdowns coming up here soon, and hopefully this week. Like him quite a bit at the price, 5,500. So he's going to be my top player to stack with Mariota. I also like Decker and Walker as well, and I wouldn't be against doing a double stack with either, with 2 of those Tennessee players against Cleveland in GPPs only. My next receiver here, Ted Ginn Jr., 4,100. The Saints are in Green Bay, but they're 4-point favorites without Rodgers there in Green Bay. And their implied team total is 25.8 points. And Ted Ginn Jr. is a discount at 4,100. It's been right around where he's been all season. You can see here 42, 48, 41. Pretty good price for him considering he is probably the number 2 receiver in New Orleans. He hasn't put any real big DraftKings scores up. 16.9 last week. He was on pace to have a monster game, but they kind of stopped throwing there. They had a huge lead and they kind of didn't really need to use him as much. He only got 4 targets, but he did have 66 yards and a touchdown. You can see here he's gotten 5 red zone targets, which I really like to see from a guy who's 4,100. And we know he has the speed to break for a long touchdown or catch a long pass for a long touchdown. So I like him at 4,100. I think he's a value pick, and he'll be one of my top value plays of the week. So on a tight end here, we've got George Kittle, 3,600. Again, I probably wouldn't play Kittle with Hyde too often, at least if I'm doing multiple GPP lineups. You probably want to split them up, but I think Kittle's in a good situation here for his price at 3,600. Again, we already talked about this being a pretty high over-under in this game, expected to be high scoring. Kittle's been getting a lot of targets lately. If we look at his last couple games, 8 and 9 targets over his last 2 games. He did have the 21.3 DraftKings points 2 games ago. Now they come home, and he is expected to get a similar usage with a new quarterback and someone he played with in college as well. So if you look, and if you also look at his red zone targets, 4 targets in the red zone the last 2 weeks, it looks like the 49ers are starting to use him a lot more, and he's a great athlete. 3,600 is a little too cheap. I'll be all over Kittle this week. I do like to spread out my tight end exposure just because it's pretty random, but Kittle is definitely one of my top tight ends of the week. And then my value defense for week 7 is going to be the Rams at 2,600. They're at home against the Cardinals. Playing DSTs against the Cardinals has been pretty solid this year. You can see the opponent plus minus is 1.5. Last week I targeted the Cardinals opponents, which was the Bucks, and the Bucks gave up a ton of points. Forget how many, but it was over 30 points, and they still managed to score 8 DraftKings points with a defensive touchdown. So Palmer does turn the ball over. Now he's on the road against the Rams. The Rams have a better defense than the Bucks, I would say. And this game does have a decently high total at 45.5, but we're getting a nice discount on the Rams at 2,600. And the Rams do have some playmakers. If we look at their game log, 28 DraftKings points in week 1 and 22 DraftKings points last week. So I think for a cheap defense, the Rams are the best option out there. That's what I'll be using for GPPs, and I wouldn't even mind them in cash games at the price. So that wraps up my week 7 picks, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, do me a big favor, click that like button or the thumbs up button here on YouTube. It will help support my YouTube channel, motivate me to do more videos in the future. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Good luck this week. Hopefully you guys make some money. Talk to you later. Cheers.